Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day-to-day lives. Let's start with the video. So, my husband injured his shoulder about 2 weeks ago. He's an engineer, and during one of his site inspections where construction was going on, he got into an accident. One of the workers dropped a heavy-duty drill from 2 stories up, and with world's crappiest luck, it fell exactly at my husband's shoulder joint. Luckily, the damage wasn't too much, and the doctors were able to save his arm from complete dysfunction, although he had to undergo 3 minor surgeries to relocate the bone that was fractured. Now he's in the hospital recovering from the surgeries. I myself am a working woman, and with 2 kids, we couldn't afford both of us taking time off of work. Someone had to make sure the income kept coming so we don't go broke because all the medical bills and the responsibility was on me now. So I was worrying a lot about how I'll manage to look after 2 kids, a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old, while making sure someone stays with my husband whilst not missing work. Thankfully, at that time, my sister offered to help me. She said that she'll be willing to go to the hospital and make sure she's there if something happens. It was a convenient option as my sister works a remote job online and wouldn't have to miss anything. I was really grateful for her help at the time. I focused all my energy towards my kids and my work. But about 2 days ago, I was going to go see my husband. I finished work early, and because the kids would be at their swimming practice for another hour, I decided to drop by the hospital before picking them up on my way back. So I went in, and before I could enter his room, I noticed that my sister was sitting very close to my husband, and they were talking about something serious. Now, I know that my husband and my sister have a good bond, and it shouldn't be odd for them to have a conversation. But I don't know why at that moment I found it weird. And for some reason, I ended up eavesdropping on their conversation. Someone did say that your gut feeling is always right, and thank God I listened to my gut and didn't let them know that I was there, because I found out that my husband and my sister were planning something very nasty. I heard my sister ask my husband how long are they going to hide, and why doesn't he just get it over with? My husband told her that he was going to ask me to divorce very soon, but then the accident happened. I was shocked to hear this. It was clear that day that they were having an affair, and I immediately took out my phone to record their conversation as proof of that. I don't know if my husband was being cursed by his sins or I was getting lucky because the door was ajar and it wasn't too hard to hear their voices or record them. I sat down and waited for them to do something that would serve as certain proof. A while later, my sister again approached the subject, and my husband told her that he thought a lot about the matter and has come up with a decent plan to make sure he gets a divorce without having to give up anything in equitable distribution. He said that as we still have a lot of bills to pay, he'll wait until I use the money in my blow through my debit card and pay up for him. He said, of course, I wouldn't hesitate in paying because we're married and he's my husband. Then he'll use the post-surgery stress as an excuse to start fights and ruin our relationship. He said that we already have a lot of fights, so it wouldn't be uncommon. And once we get into a big fight, which will eventually happen, he'll ask for a divorce, saying it wouldn't work out between us. My sister asked him why he was going to all this trouble, and he said that this way I wouldn't suspect anything. And when the time comes for children's custody, I would agree by myself to take them. He said if I were to find out that he's getting a divorce because of an affair, I'll try to make it hard for him and might ask him to take care of the kids as revenge. I couldn't take it anymore after that. It's true that we had a lot of fights, and they were usually because of his habit of always using our joint account to buy stuff that was for him or about how he's always absent from our kids' lives, and I end up pulling his weight and making excuses for his parenting. But his affair explains a lot of his behavior, and although shocking, it wasn't as big of a surprise. I somehow expected it. What was mind boggling, though, was the fact that he was having an affair with my sister. How could she do this to me? Why does it have to be that wench? As my mind wasn't straight, I left the hospital without confronting him. I came home to think through my options. Now I have the recording as proof that he was cheating on me and was even planning to not take responsibility either for our kids or for his actions. After hearing the vile things he said, there was no way I'll stick around to be humiliated by him later. I was thinking of getting out before he could make his move. But what I really want is to take away what he most wants to save, and that is his money. He was trying to desperately get out of sharing our equitable property, so I needed to prepare before I leave him so that I get the house and most of our assets, while he can sleep on the streets for all I care. Now, WIBTA, if I pushed for him to take custody of one of our kids, I know he's going to say that with his shoulder injury and his job, he isn't fit to parent a kid, but I really want him to suffer. So remember how I told you about my husband who was having an affair with my sister and was planning to ruin my life before asking for a divorce? Well, it's a good thing I didn't confront him about it right then and there because it gave me time to process everything and think about my next move. I took a few days to make my plan and act on it. The first thing I did was to go through the account statements of our joint account and see how much he contributed to it. Turns out he was actually spending the amount he used to add in there. So I took out my share from it and deposited it in the trust fund for both of my kids, which can only be accessed by me and no one else. I used the rest of the money to pay for his hospital bill so that he doesn't get suspicious about anything, because if I hadn't done that, he might have found out about the pending payments. I contacted the lawyer and got him to make papers for the transfer of our house's lease, which was currently under my husband's name. I mixed the papers with some hospital paperwork and took it to my husband when he was under heavy sedatives. I asked my sister to go home that day so she does not end up noticing anything I was doing. I had to be very careful, and thankfully, I pulled it off. Now that the house was under my name, I knew he can't kick me out, but I sure as hell can kick him out whenever I want. All that's left now is to wait for him to return home and welcome him back just to hand him his bags and ask him to leave the house. I cannot wait to tell that jerk that I know everything. Finally, after 45 days of hospitalization, my husband came back home today, and he really did not expect the surprise that was waiting for him. I had sent the kids to my mom's house because I knew I needed them away from the house so I could properly greet my husband and give him his gifts without worrying about my kids overhearing me. When my sister dropped him off at our house, I welcomed him. True to his word, he was being very irksome and irritated and seated himself at the sofa with a grunt. I had to control my impulse to scoff at him. When he asked if he could get some water, I told him he should do that himself. This was a bait because obviously he was planning on picking up fights with me, and that's exactly what he did. When he was ranting off at me, I went into his room and brought out the bags fully packed with his stuff. He was confused and asked me what I was doing, so I played the recording I took more than a month ago. The color drained from his face. He didn't say anything but just looked at me. I told him now that he knows what's happening, he should hurry up and call his lover to come pick him up. He finally found his voice and told me that I cannot do this, but I stopped him before he could even complete his sentence. I told him how I had gotten him to sign over the house to me and how I have every right to kick him out of my property. I kept the other stuff hidden because I know once he finds out about it, he'll get even more mad, so I'll let him cool down a bit before he gets that shock. He started fighting with me after that, but I didn't humor him. Once he was done raging, he asked my sis to pick him up and left. The satisfaction I got from all this was unbelievable. I'm still hurt over what he did, and I still want to jump on my sister and rip her hair out for being a part of this. But I have to be content with this only. Finally, after 3 months, my divorce was finalized. As for the kids, I decided to keep them with me. I realized that it wasn't my kids' fault that my ex husband cheated on me, and I love them too much to use them as a piece of revenge. Now my kids and I are living in the house that my husband paid for and that makes me really happy because he didn't get anything out of our divorce. He belatedly realized our joint account was empty and that he had no power over the trust fund. The only other thing that we had was our inheritances, but they weren't included as marital property, so he couldn't have taken mine even if he planned on it. On the other hand, I got the house, the kids, and he has to pay me child support. Revenge never felt better, and I'm happy that cheating bastard is out of my life. I've also told all my family about my sister's antiques, and let's just say no one is really happy with her. NTA, nah, you're not the a-hole, and go ahead and get everything under your name. Take the funds out and either spend them or keep them in a bond or trust fund for your kids. Make that cheating a-hole pay for what he is planning on doing. NTA, you wouldn't be the a-hole at all. He deserves everything he got coming, and go ahead and do your best to make him pay. And while you're at it, you should also ruin your sister's life. Maybe out her as an adulteress to her friends, family, and colleagues. I, 35 male, have a driveway that goes along one side of my house to the backyard. A couple of years ago, my neighbors built a basement access and started renting the space out to tenants. The access is alongside my driveway, and past it there is enough room for two vehicles to park, one in front of the other so that they block in one vehicle. Since they intentionally block in one vehicle, the tenants decided my driveway is fair use anytime they need to pull in out of their parking spot. While this initially irritated me since they did not ask permission, I eventually spoke to the vehicle owner and got them to agree to cleaning up any mud they track across it and not compact snow before I've had a chance to shovel it. I've never been happy that they use it, but so long as they're not creating a mess I have to clean up, it's negligible. Plus, it seems impossible to monitor my driveway every day and try to file a report against the constant use. Recently, 3 months now, my brother, 36 male, who was living with me, passed away. It was an extremely difficult week emotionally. Thankfully, all my family made the trip to my state to help me sort through everything and made sure I was not alone during the subsequent weeks. Several days after his passing, I came home from picking up my family from the airport, and the neighbor's Jeep was parked right in the middle of my driveway. I was completely livid. I knocked on the tenant's and neighbor's door with no answer. I was literally looking up the number for parking enforcement when the neighbors' whole household came out to meet me, about 5 to 6 adults between the homeowner and tenants. They explained that they were moving their boat and figured they would only be occupying the space for a short time. I told them in no uncertain terms that they were not allowed to block my driveway for any reason, especially when I had so much family driving in from other states for the funeral. Before I'm asked if there is more than enough free parking on the street they could have easily parked in front of either house or across the street. Last week, the same tenants were in the process of moving out and again decided to park diagonally across my driveway so they could more easily move a mattress into their vehicle. This was really only an issue because my new roommates needed to grab medicine for their kid and were blocked in. I went out, told them they have to move, and if they need to use my driveway, they have to ask permission. I'm tired of this constant battle for something I think should be common sense courtesy. I'm at the point where I will gladly pay a surveyor to come out, mark the property line, then build a 1 foot high spike fence along the driveway space. WIBTA for doing this? Knowing about where the line is, I would be taking back about a foot of space that they use for parking regularly, along with intentionally creating an inconvenience for them. The homeowner is aware of the situation but does not care. First off, my condolences on your brother's passing. No amount of time ever seems to be enough. I'm glad that your family's there for you as you grieve. Also, NTA in regards to the fence. Your neighbor needs to make better parking accommodations for his tenants, not you. I'm not sure if you're going to do it yourself or hire a local company to do it, but before you do, I would recommend speaking to your municipality's building code enforcement office to find out what rules are in place that you need to follow, i.e., how deep down below the frost line and far apart do the poles have to be? What's the maximum height? Is there a difference for a wooden slat fence or a metal chain link fence? How close can it be to the property line? How far away does it need to be from the sidewalk and or road, etc.? I'd definitely be putting one up ASAP. NTA, it's expensive, but put down large boulders along the driveway property line, not a fence. A car can knock a small fence down on accident. A car cannot knock over a large boulder. I have a 17-year-old female, Cara, and a 9-year-old boy, Mark. Cara is back and forth between me and her dad. Mark lives primarily with me. They do not have the same dad. I was picking Cara up from her dad's for the week. She's autistic and does not drive. I'd asked her repeatedly to be ready when I got there. Cara hadn't started getting ready, and it was 2 hours before she was ready to go. Thankfully, my ex's long-term girlfriend is lovely, and I enjoyed time catching up with her. Still, I was getting annoyed because we'd gone over this and Cara knew the time I'd be there and when to be ready. I'd made plans to take the kids to a fun park they like on Saturday and out for ice cream after. They knew about these plans over a week. Due to COVID and limited people allowed at once, they are asking people to schedule time slots. Ours was at 1:30 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. Cara and Mark love arcade games rides. We needed to leave the house a few minutes after 1 p.m. at the latest to get there with time to account for traffic and do the check-in process. I tell them to make sure they're ready to go and we need to be out the door in 5 minutes tops. Next thing I know, the shower is running and Cara is screaming. She needs to get a shower first and we can't leave yet. This is after I told her repeatedly when we needed to leave by. It was on her reminder calendar as well as our family calendar, so Cara definitely knew. Mark was getting upset and worried about that, we might miss our outing. While Cara was in the shower, I sent her a text saying Mark and I went on so as not to lose our time slot. Plus, I'd paid in advance, and I was sorry she could not join us. Cara called me about 50 minutes or so later, screaming for me to come back and pick her up so she could have a few minutes of fun, saying, I'm an awful mom, I'm unfair, I should have waited, she shouldn't be punished for getting a shower. I told her, I'm not driving back to get her. It's unfair to Mark to make him leave early and miss most of his fun time. Cara screamed that she hates me. And I love Mark more than her and hung up on me. When Mark and I were leaving, I tried calling and texting Cara to see if she'd like me to pick her up for ice cream. She did not answer, so it ended up being just me and Mark for ice cream. I did bring Cara back a pint of her favorite to have later. When I got home, Cara was giving me the silent treatment and being standoffish towards Mark. At midnight, Cara came in my room and uploaded on me for leaving her, saying I excluded her, made her feel less. She'd been excited to go today. I didn't take her needs into consideration, and we don't go often, and I failed to realize how special it was to her, and she's hurt by my actions today. I told Cara this was not a last-minute plan. We talked about this for over a week. Plus, I'd set reminders for her, and she knew the schedule and that she was expected to manage getting herself ready on time and be prepared to leave on time. AITA, NTA, you shared in comments that you tried to wake Kara up. You set multiple reminders on her devices, and Kara's therapist said it was important to let Kara experience natural consequences for not using the skills she is supposed to be building and working on. This was a low stakes, though it did not feel that way to Kara, situation in which to experience consequences. She missed something fun, but not something essential like a medical appointment, family event that only happens once, wedding, etc. NTA, kid needs to learn how to be on time. And it certainly isn't fair for the younger child to miss out because his older sibling can't get herself ready to go on time.